Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can see and hear us because it has been a day for tech so far. It's been a day. Welcome to Goat's Eye View, Conversation on Games with Nerissa Hart. Conversation about a lot more than games. Before I do anything else, let me introduce our guest for today, Nerissa Hart, noted speedrunner, especially on Shadow of the Colossus, thespian, artist, TTRPG player. So, number of topics near and dear to my heart. Oh my God, Chelsea made us a poem for Goat's Eye Views. One of her friends, community members, followers makes poems for every TTRPG stream we go into, and Chelsea did one for this, so I'm going to read that super quick.
My God, please do. That's so cute.
The campaign week is done. Now a look behind the scenes on the topic of passions we play on our screens, acting games and going really fast. No doubt tonight's conversation will be a total blast. So excited for this session of Goat's Eye View. Thank you, Nerissa and Galway. Much love. I can see and hear you. Thank you so much, Chelsea. Beautiful as always.
That was absolutely gorgeous, and I am living for every single word of it. That was amazing.
Yeah. Yes, so thank you so much, Nerissa, for joining us. If you want to introduce yourselves to everybody real quick. It's not a speedrunning joke.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that. So, hi everyone, how's it going? My name is Nerissa Hart. I am a gender fluid speedrunner, primarily use they and she pronouns. But I've been a professional actor for 7 years, primarily based in the DC metro scene, but I actually have since moved north to Western New York. And then I also do photography and singing and TTRPG live plays and podcasts, just a whole myriad of things. But I think primarily on Twitch, the main thing I'm known for is my Let's Plays and speedruns. So that's me. If you are curious about checking out my channel, it is Ruby Hart, RUBIEHART. So that's me.
Yeah, and thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and chat with our community. Thank you so much, especially to Sam, who put this connection together, suggested this, and helped keep prodding me along when I was like, but I have so many things. Because
I get that free time, that wonderful elusive thing.
Yeah, but So as I mentioned, this is Goat's Eye View, where we talk to wonderful people like Nerissa, where we talk about topics like TTRPG, safety and consent in gaming, etc. Sometimes in roundtables, sometimes one-on-one interviews. If you want to see more of this, if you want to see us do Let's Plays or lots of tabletop RPG streams, you can follow us here, twitch.tv/helpfulgoat. You can check out our archive on YouTube. Just look for Helpful Goat Gaming. And a couple of chat commands that I always like to highlight. If you want to hang out with us, you can use !Discord. Get a link to our Discord. We do game days, movie nights, generally hang out. Generally, we're really weird. This will probably actually limit the ability. Like, the intros for this are way more normal than any TTRPG game we ever play, where I'm able to much more point at these and be like, okay, you're going to get more of this. It's going to be more of this. So if you want that, go join the Discord. But freely encourage you, go join the Discord. We have a lot of fun in there. !Donate is a thing we do at Helpful Goat. It highlights causes that are near and dear to our hearts. Right now we are highlighting Trevor Project, and particularly LGBTQ youth everywhere. And as always, we encourage you to take the time, if you have the emotional resources, to read up, learn some, and if you have the resources, monetary, time, energy, etc., to donate, and maybe even look for local causes to donate to, because big national causes are amazing. They do a lot of good work, but if you want to benefit a community, especially your community, a local charity will do that way better. And we like to highlight these national ones because it's a good place to start. So yes, and yeah, Elise, you're right in chat. This is the most normal HG intro we've had. This is legitimately.
Should I don't really have anything I could like flip off of or put on my head. Should I make it weird?
No,
I can make it weird.
It's okay. It's okay. It's the right energy, but honestly the weird right. will happen. The weird will happen organically. We don't need to stretch for that here.
I am a very weird and awkward person, so I'm sure it's fine. This is fine. Everything's fine.
And if you would like to support us doing more of these types of things, more interviews, more conversations, more tabletop RPGs, I never promise that you'll let us do it more professionally, but we'll do more of it, and we'll have more expensive stock photography. and maybe better equipment for ourselves along the way, exclamation point coffee, KO-FI, to donate directly to us, or exclamation point merch to buy some of our merch, such as the Helpful Goat shirt I am wearing, but my camera's mirrored, so everything looks weird. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Next week coming up on Thursday, we have either Spire or Dragon Queen's Cradle. We're not sure. We'll get back to you. That'll be Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And on Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, we will have Ghosts and Dragons, The Fates of Rin, which will not be emulating the chaotic goblin energy from last time. But it should be fun. And with that is enough of me blathering along. I would very much like to turn it over to the questions that we've already had. As always on Goat's Eye View, I strongly encourage you, post up questions in chat. I'm happy to pull some, continue this conversation, etc. We also get them from our Discord, so really excited to get to chat with you. And with that, let's go ahead and drop into our first question, which comes from good friend Sam. What's the first speed run that you saw which made you think, I want to try that? And then what drew you specifically to Shadow of the Colossus?
Okay, so those are actually two very different stories.
Nice.
So
good.
I didn't know what speedrunning was for years and years and years. I actually didn't even hear about it for the first time until I was in college. The first one I had ever seen is I am a huge fan of the Legend of Zelda series.
Nice, yeah.
And yeah. Gotta love it. The first video game that I ever actually beat full start to finish, outside of when my parents got me Barbie's Mermaid Dream Adventure or something like that for the Game Boy Color, was The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons. And oh my God, that game just stayed with me for years and years and years. It got fantasy just ingrained into my bones.
Nice.
And when one of my friends said, oh yeah, you should check out speedrunning, they had pulled up a full-on glitched version of Ocarina of Time, and it was someone beating it in 10 minutes and warping to get a bottle, then using it in Queen Goma's lair as an ocarina and suddenly being in the final boss fight. I don't understand how it works, and my mind was just exploding. I tend to make a face with just full-on eyes wide open and will sit there in silence and then just start screaming, what is happening? And that was very much the reaction that happened in this instance. And after that, I occasionally would watch speedruns, and one time was of Shadow of the Colossus, and that was after it had gone to, I think, AGDQ the first time, when it was a friend of mine, Gooberman, formerly known as Church Neo. But as far as Shadow of the Colossus, this whole saga, so buckle your seats. I was introduced to this game in high school. My best friend at the time, Alex, and I both found it just on a shelf at GameStop, thought it looked interesting. I had people playing the PS2 version years before, but I had never really tried it. Mm-hmm. And she was the kind of person who would sometimes play video games, but usually I would have the controller and we would figure out the puzzles together.
Yeah. I love playing that way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's so much fun just being able to bond with a friend and put all your brains together. So we played through the entire thing the first time like that. And the beauty of the game itself and all of the Colossus fights and the fact that so much of the storytelling is implicitly built into the world, and it's meant for you to be able to come up with your own theories. For any of you who may not have had the chance to play the game, I cannot recommend it enough. The basic premise of the game is you play as this protagonist, Wander, who goes to a land only known as the Forbidden Land and talks to a sleeping god known as the Doorman, who apparently can bring people back to life, and says, hey, I've got this dead girl with me. Can you bring her back to life? And Doorman says, cool, but you have to release my power that is sealed inside of these colossi. So you commit genocide across an entire Forbidden Land to free a potentially evil god. So wholesome crap.
Yeah. Also, I 100% see there's a very direct and short line between that and most D&D campaigns.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're really not wrong. Also, I've seen some game systems that have been made actually based on Shadow of the
Mhm.
Colossus, and one time for a D&D campaign I was running, I actually built some of the colossi as D&D monsters.
Nice.
And especially with Bosseron, there's a colossus that you normally topple using a geyser, and I had all these geysers built on these like lair actions with timing, and then one of them just goes, "Oh, I'm going to use reverse gravity." So the colossus just lifted into the air, and they had to fight it, trying to figure out how to get to it while it was hanging in the air upside down. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The moments that
but
D&D gives you.
yeah, really. But anyway, so when I moved into college, I met one of my best friends in the world who we've been best friends for 10 years now, which is insane to think about. And we bonded over the fact that we liked a lot of the same video games.
Mhm.
So, like, uh, Final Fantasy X and Portal, and one of them was Shadow of the Colossus. So we made it this yearly tradition to pile into a dorm room. And at first it was just the two of us. And then a bunch of our friends kind of got in on the action. And we would pass the controller back and forth and take the colossi that we liked, leave the others to the other person. And then we got so competitive at the game that it eventually turned into full on doing shots between every colossus or every other colossus, having different screens and racing. And we were speedrunning without realizing we were speedrunning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And granted, our speedrunning was like 7 hours. So still not that fast. But then fast forward, I, as a theater person, I've been acting since I was 4, doing it professionally for 7 years. I have never gone a long extended period without doing theater. So when pandemic hit, I was like, what do I do with all this time I have that I'm not in rehearsal and what do I do? And after all of those years of Shadow of the Colossus being the game that my friends and I would play, it became a big source of comfort of like, if everything else is out of control and chaotic, I can control this one thing. And the first few weeks of pandemic, I just threw myself into playing it like nonstop. And one day my roommates, who like one of them is a WoW Mythic player, the others are ranked players in League of Legends and Apex, they went, have you ever considered speedrunning? Because I think you'd be really good at it for this game. And I didn't think I was going to be on a professional level. But then when we pulled up speedrun.com, they were like, if you had submitted that one that you just did, you would be 9th in the world. And that was before I even knew any speedrun strats and all this stuff. And I went, oh, cool. And I ended up recording and submitting a run. I didn't know if I was going to want to get involved in the community because I've had really bad experiences with certain gaming communities before, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But they were super inclusive, super accepting. We're so excited to see my run. And now I've become really good friends with a bunch of them.
Awesome.
And that's what made me want to stay. So that's the long saga of how I got into speedrunning Shadow of the Colossus. Yeah.
That is awesome. I hear a lot of what you're saying about the love for just sort of the things that made Shadow of the Colossus a favorite game. And I also 100% hear as the pandemic hit and just sort of things came in, retreating back into games. One of the things that I did in Helpful Goat server was I just did a normal sort of playthrough, but a playthrough and just explaining the lore of Bloodborne, which is one of my favorite games for that emergent storytelling and the blink and you miss it. And, you know, a lot of the people in our community can attest to just like, yeah, here's like this, and like, this is this little piece of lore.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yes.
And also you are braver than I. The Souls games destroy me every time, but props for being able to get into it, because oh my god, those games wreck me.
Bloodborne is the only game I believe on PlayStation I ever platinumed, because I was just like, must keep going. I actually technically got to the platinum on the stream that I did inside our server, because I had like 2 things I hadn't done. But yeah, no, so I get that, and I'm really glad to, especially I will say, as an outside observer, glad to hear about the welcome that you got from the speedrunning community, because yeah, there's so many great parts of gaming communities, and there's so many really, really shitty parts of gaming communities. And it's always wonderful to get to hear about the nice ones.
Yeah, one thing that makes me sad is there are some online games that I would love to play because gameplay mechanics wise, they look amazing. And then you see their communities and how they treat femmes and let alone cis women, but also, you know, people who are
absolutely
gender nonconforming like myself, and just it can be a whole to-do. There's a reason I stopped playing League of Legends. So getting to be a part of this community, and I remember sometimes we'll do what we call big races. So it's like a bunch of the speedrunners from the community will all race one of the games together. Oh, nice. Yeah, and it's always just like in competitive fun. And the very first time we did one and I was part of it, one of the people who was commentating completely unprompted just went, "Oh, by the way, which pronouns are you leaning towards today?" And just that little thing made the biggest difference in the world and just made me feel so much more welcome. So yeah, I'm super grateful for them.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I definitely hear you. I've had a number of femme friends that we would play certain games and then like be on voice comms or things, and other people would hear their voice, and I'm just like, oh wow, y'all are awful. Like y'all should feel real bad about yourselves. And that was why I was very excited when Discord, sort of along with the pandemic, became so much more of a thing. Cause I'm like, oh cool, we can be on comms and no, everyone else no.
Yeah. Discord has kind of been a saving grace for gaming, in my opinion, too. Also, I am a little obsessed with, oh God, I'm a little obsessed with text-based RPGs or text games, text adventures. Also because I love indie games and things that are just kind of off the beaten path. And there is something called Epic RPG that is just a ridiculously, hilariously written RPG game that you can put in a Discord. I have it in my Discord and I'm way too addicted. I'm way too addicted. It is so fun and so deceptively fun. I did not expect to go down this rabbit hole as hard as I did, and here we are.
One of our friends, Tyler Crumrine, is an independent game designer and was talking to us about on a previous Goat's Eye View about a bunch of sort of these new emergent TTRPGs, one of which was This Discord is Haunted. Which is,
go on.
It's built, essentially you run it like a you have a set of Discord architecture you need to put in place, and that's what the game is going to sort of tell you. And you need to have certain channels, certain voice, certain text, certain settings, and it essentially is creating this idea of you're doing paranormal investigation, and you have some people who are investigators and some people who are ghosts. And because of the way you've configured Discord settings, they can only interact in certain ways, and you can only do certain things. So that sounds like that might be up your alley.
I'm not writing it down right now, and I don't know what you're talking about. This Discord is haunted, is what you said?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I was gonna say when Tyler was telling me about that, I was like, oh, I may need to can I do this in just a set of channels, or do I have to set up an entirely new Discord? Because I'll set up a Discord, it's fine.
Sometimes it's worth it.
Sometimes
it's worth it.
Yeah, no, but I hear you on that. Kind of a thing that you said in terms of your own process of starting from this playing with friends and then just sort of racing them. Rachel in our community asked, really need to disable it so the goat doesn't bot every time for every sub when it's a gift sub. But thank you so much, Sam, for the 5 gifted subs.
Nice.
But Rachel asked, how much of speedrunning is sort of playing the game and finding those little things that let you go faster? How much is sort of watching other speedruns and learning sort of general speedrun strats? And how much is, well, that happened?
Oh my God. I feel like every speedrunner is a little bit different. For me, it very much started with videos, just going down the rabbit hole of, okay, I need to watch the big tutorial video that exists and then pause it and play it repeatedly and then pull up my game and see if I can do the tricks right. But then there are also so many times where you'll go to execute a trick well, and then something completely different that you don't expect happens. And that's actually how we find a lot of our backup strats. Shadow of the Colossus is one of those games where you very much, especially with the category I run, which is any percent or any percent normal primarily, it's basically from the very start of the game to the very end, I'm running the whole thing. And unlike Boss Rush, where if something goes wrong, you can just hit start and reset so you can retry and it puts you in the right setup. If you mess something up timing wise, you have to know how to recover. So much of it ends up being, well, that didn't go according to plan. Now I need to remember. Yeah, I need to remember every single thing that I know about this game, how many edges are on the Colossus, and how I can get up there using the animations at my disposal. So you really do have to do a combination of those things. Right now, I will say it's been really great because now that I know the categories much better and I know a lot of the shorthand for different strategies, I don't have to watch quite as many videos. Sometimes I'll pull them up for occasional reference, but a lot more of it is just, hey, I'm having a hard time with this. And I'll post something in the Team Eco Discord with just a question. And sometimes people will post a little clip saying, oh, well, here's how I found that it worked really well for me. And then there are other times where I have a few friends in the community, like Aiden Umferson is one of them. He is an incredible speedrunner of the game and one of the nicest people I've ever met online. Holy crap. And he multiple times has popped into my chat. And if I'm working on something, said, okay, do you want notes? Awesome. And then after I do a fight, if something goes wrong, he'll say, okay, go a little earlier here. This you're nailing perfectly. And he not only helps serve as a coach, but also a cheerleader. And part of the Team Eco community is so much of just that energy of if someone has a question, we're all like, we're happy to share our secrets. Come join and be friends. So it's not, oh, we're going to keep all the secrets to ourselves. And that's something I'm exceedingly grateful for. But yeah, I will definitely say between all three of those things that you listed, it is very much so a balance. I think it just depends on what phase of the learning process and the speedrunning process you're in, on which one of those is going to kind of be
most relevant. Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Awesome. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. You've talked about some of it, and you've talked wonderfully and heartwarmingly, I think, for everyone in our community listening to this, that you were welcomed to a community and that you found a lot of positive support, and you just referenced being able to sort of ask questions. But what were some of the biggest hurdles you faced in terms of getting to where you are now within speedrunning, and how did you sort of overcome those?
A lot of it actually comes from confidence issues. So I sometimes have mental blocks with taking things to the next level. So, oh gosh, there's this really extra hard strategy and I don't know if I'm ready for that. Or if I don't get something right after a bit, then it's so easy to default to the thing that's easier. But I've, with the support of other people, have been working more and more to try and get to those better and harder strategies that take more time. And it feels so rewarding when you finally get those right. So that's one thing that I will say I'm really grateful for, is that support. But that has been a huge hurdle for me, is just constantly having to overcome those mental barriers. And I would say the other thing is feeling like I'm at the back of the big pack. And what I mean by that is there are a group of, I can list off like 8 speedrunners of this game who are just absolutely freaking incredible at it. Just anytime they're doing a race, anytime they're doing a marathon, they'll be like, oh, this was an okay time. And they're decimating and getting a minute or two behind world record pace. Like, it's insane to watch these.
This is the
work.
bracket that they live in is right there.
Exactly. And as far as the way that that community kind of breaks down, or that group kind of breaks down, there are a lot of people who consider me as like right at the bottom of that pack of I'm still considered a really good speedrunner of the game, but I haven't hit the level of if I were to do a race with like Inception and Tic Tac and Foxy, if I were to do a race with them, they would win. It would just be a matter of how far behind them am I. And I do really enjoy doing races with them because it does show me places that I can improve, things that they do that I can learn from. And I learn really well that way. But kind of like when you get told no at an audition, getting the lower times over and over, like sometimes it gets to your head a little bit, but having that support and being able to just play the game on your own and take a deep breath and go, okay, I don't have to reset it. Every time the teeniest thing goes wrong, I can have fun and just work on the recoveries. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles with getting into speedrunning is just overcoming the mental block of saying you can do this rather than, oh God, can I do this? If that makes sense.
Oh, and that makes a ton of sense. I mean, not to tie everything back to TTRPGs, but welcome to my entire sort of hobby list. But like, that's one of the biggest things when I talk to people who are talking about GMing or DMing, like, do it. Like they will ask like, hey, is there things I should know or blah, blah, blah. And like the number one thing you should know is go if you have, especially if you have friends who are interested in it and who love you and are good and supportive, go do it. They're not gonna be upset with you. They're not gonna be mad at you. And after the first time you've done it, it's so much easier to go do it again and to then start doing that process that you're thinking of like, oh, I want to do this a little bit better. Or, oh, I watched this live play of a game and this actual play and I kind of want to integrate this, or I want to try this new game. And it's like, that's all so much easier after you do it the first time.
100%. And especially since so much of playing TTRPGs, it's about learning improv skills. And if that's not something that is part of your skill set, it does take a while to get down, to be able to be fully present in a scene, to be able to figure out how to play to lift with your scene partners. And then as a GM, learning the mechanical system and making sure that you know it like the back of your hand because your players are going to be asking questions. So as far as that side, I also very much get that as someone who plays as both a player and as GM multiple times in the past.
Yeah, and it's just that thing of, we're often our own biggest blockers, and it's always worth remembering, and it's always a worthwhile message to say of like, I think it's for anyone who's thinking about speedrunning, you are exceptionally good at what you do, and I think it can be nice to hear, there's still that, oh crap, can I do this? Or, oh, I need to work on this. I tell anyone where it's like, yes, I DM lots of actual plays that go on Twitch and things. It's like, I also still occasionally have the player will ask me a question. I'm like, book time. We're gonna go look at the book now. Or I'm just saying this. Let's go with it.
Talking about.
Normally, I'm just like, we're gonna say yes, but don't hold me to that for the rest of the campaign. You're probably gonna break the world with me having said yes to that, and when we do, we're just gonna rewind that real quick.
I will say, though, on the complete flip side, one thing that I found the most rewarding and fun with D&D campaigns I've played is if someone doesn't know a rule, finding a homebrew rule that works better for your group. Because in the end, every tabletop system is meant as a tool for you to tell a story. And if there's a part of that isn't working for you, change it. Yep. And as long as everyone consents at the table, it's something that I found really rewarding. So like there was one campaign I was part of, and it was actually the first full campaign I ever played of D&D 5e. And having this new exposure was really fun and exciting, but I was still very new. And we didn't use XP to level up. What would basically happen instead is we would level up by story chapter, but then at the end of every session, the GM would say, okay, what did your character do? And you could list off how many enemies you killed, or you could list off in-character actions. So if your character has an arch enemy who is in this pub, and even though it is risky for you to break into their room, you're like, well, I broke into my arch enemy's room to get blackmail on him. That is such an in-character action that he would reward you with XP, and then he had a buyout system where after you accumulated a certain amount, use that to say, I want this magic item to appear in the campaign, and you would eventually get it.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a fun way to kind of use your XP to inspire what items were brought into the game that your character could get. And I loved that system.
Yeah, and I mean that's also you harken on a thing that I've talked a lot about on sort of this type of stream or other streams that I've appeared on, where I'm like, good or well done, RPG is everybody at the table had fun, safe, fun, happy. I know people who are 100% like they could be doing this or like Warhammer, and it's that level of grid-based tactical crunch and get out the ruler, where is the cone exactly. I've known people who do everything theater of the mind and never have a combat. I'm like, all of these can be entirely right. The game doesn't get to tell you which one it is. It's, did everybody have fun? If somebody didn't, go back, figure out why. Maybe do it, maybe split off. It's all okay. It's just, if people are safe, if people are happy, you're doing it right.
Yeah, that's why I love before a campaign when some of the best groups that I've played with will have a conversation beforehand
Session
with
zero.
each person. The session zero, not only talking about safety mechanics, but also saying, okay, with this character, what do you want me as a GM to focus on for your story? Or what kind of story are you looking to tell? And that not only lets the other players know, like, how to highlight you, how to push your character. If someone's like, I don't want a tragic story, I want my character to be happy for once, then you know to not throw super dramatic things at that character. But then if someone's like, hey, here is 15 pages of horrible, tragic backstory, hurt me, please, I am here for it, then the GM knows that they can throw harder punches. And working with GMs and other players, having that understanding from the beginning just is so rewarding in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sort of back on the speedrunning, and you commented that in certain ways you got into Shadow of the Colossus speedrunning just from a game that you loved and loved playing. Do you ever, Elise asked, do you ever play the games you speedrun just sort of casually again? When you pick up a new game you know some speed strats for, do you do those or just play the game first?
Yeah, okay, so I do actually do this, and basically what will happen is there are some times where, like, Shadow of the Colossus is the main game that I speedrun, but I actually have other games that I want to start speedrunning. I just never had the time until I went full time, like a month or so ago. So now I'm adding those to my repertoire, which I'm really excited about. But with SOTC specifically, there are some times where I'll either want to play the full Team Eco series, so Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian, and I'll play it so I can watch all of the cutscenes. I don't skip anything. I don't mess with anything. I keep it on the same original settings. And one of my favorite things that is so silly, but I love it, about playing Shadow of the Colossus without using speedrun strats, or with using speedrun strats but still keeping in all the original settings and cutscenes, is the god Dorman that lives in the world will give you hints on how to beat the Colossi. And the joke that I would make with friends when we would race it casually, and even to this day when I play it casually, is if Dorman chimes in and goes, hey, here's the hint, but you're already on the Colossus and already know what you're doing.
Thanks, buddy.
Like, there have been some times where, like, I'll do the final stab, and then as the animation's playing, just Dorman comes in and goes, knock, knock. I don't know if you knew this, but maybe you can distract it. And it's like, Dorman,
he dead.
The corpse is right. I think I got it. But thank you.
Is there a delay on you getting the power back? Shouldn't you know this?
Right? Like, you would think so. But yeah, there are definitely times where I'll go back and replay it because I love seeing the cutscenes and I love being able to experience it like it's the first time every now and again. And I feel like every time that I watch the full cutscenes or play the game, just wandering the world, not worrying about going quickly, just taking in more of the landscape, I learn new things. So, actually, speaking of goats, there is something that I never knew about Shadow of the Colossus. And one day a friend went, "Oh, do you know about the goats in SOTC?" And I was like, "Excuse me, what?" Because the whole thing about the game is outside of the Colossi and then like some birds and salamanders, there aren't any living creatures there. So at first I thought they were talking about living goats. And I went, no, what's going on? But there are in 4 different places of the Forbidden Land, like cave drawings of goats.
Nice.
Just hidden in the landscape. And I seriously wonder what the designers intended that to mean for the society that used to live there.
Yeah.
I have theories, but it's the theories that people have come up with in the community is just I gobble it up. It's amazing. Yeah. Everyone has a different theory and I love it. So yeah, I 100% love going back and playing it casually.
Nice. Yeah. So you mentioned the sort of the welcoming reception that you got from the speedrunning community, and Sam had a question of if you could change one thing about the perception of the speedrunning community, so how that community is perceived, what would it be?
Oh God, that it's the only thing in our life. I think there is this thought of speedrunners just being people who do nothing but, sit there in a dark basement playing a game over and over and over and over, and that is our only life and we're obsessed. And while yes, I am very obsessed with a game and I professionally play a game repeatedly to get, as good as I can at it. Like one of the people who I know in the SOTC community is also an incredible artist and will constantly post her drawings and paintings. There's another who is a props designer. I personally am an actor. There is one speedrunner of the game Eco who he's a pastor and also loves writing parodies of songs. So we actually recorded a parody song about Shadow of the Colossus together with him playing ukulele.
Nice.
Yeah. So just I find out so many different things about these people who we share this incredible common interest. And it's so cool getting to know the other aspects of their personality and the other things that are important to them, because I will say the one thing I have found across the board is every single person I've ever met who is into speedrunning has a level of passion and dedication to things they enjoy that I haven't seen many other places. So yeah, I would say that's one of the biggest misconceptions is, we just sit in a room, play the same game over and over, and that is the only thing we do with our whole life. Yeah. When there are so many other interests with that group of people. And I will say out of and granted, every community has things that can be improved and things that it's working through. But out of any gaming community I have been a part of, video game wise, it is the most welcoming and receptive community I have ever been a part of. Now, awesome. I know that, it's incredible. And I know that for some speedrun games, that isn't the case. So apparently, like, the Resident Evil community can be pretty toxic from what I understand, like the speedrun community. Yeah. And there are a few other games where it can be a little more toxic. But as far as the marathons I've been a part of and the speed runners I've met, it's all about the passion. And then for speedrun events, most of them are just raising money for different charities. Yeah. And using games as a way to do that. And the amount of passion people bring towards using games to make the world a better place and to help other people just is so unparalleled versus anything else I've seen. And also you see people from all over the world coming together to unite for these causes. So that's awesome. That's one thing I think a lot of people don't I don't think a lot of people know that, and I think it's something that should be talked about more.
Yeah, that's really awesome. That's that's a really wonderful thing. One question from Twitch chat before we go to break for 5 minutes. Vex in the chat asks, are there types of games that you can't speedrun? Just sort of as a general principle, I guess.
I want to ask actually a follow-up question to that. Do you mean me personally, or do you mean just in general in the world? Because those are two very different questions.
Yes, like, I can speed run everything.
Very different answers.
In general.
Okay, so in general, okay. So you can't speed run games that don't have an end. So, for example, like there's no real way to speed run Blackout Club, right? You can speedrun maybe individual missions, but the missions constantly change.
Yeah.
For shooter games that just drop you into a round, yeah, you can go quickly, but I don't know necessarily if there is a way to speedrun a game that doesn't have a definite end.
How do you speedrun Quake Arena? Like it.
Yeah. How do you speedrun Quake Arena? How do you speedrun No Man's Sky? How do you speedrun these games that don't have a defined ending? Whereas I would say that any game that has a defined end point, you can use a timer to start and stop it. So even if the speedrun is super long, I know some friends who, as much as I love Final Fantasy X, I don't think I could ever speedrun it because the speedrun is 10 hours. It's JRPGs are very, very long, but technically it's still a speed run because versus other times you are going extremely fast. But yeah, I would say really the only games that I can't see you ever being able to speed run are games that have no defined endpoint. Like also another one that comes to mind is like Animal Crossing games. Yes, you can build your whole house.
Speedrun to you've completed your house or something, but yeah.
Or you've gotten all the fossils, but I don't. So much of that is based on RNG and is random, but there's no endpoint in the game that I can't really see it being speedrun. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are speedruns of it, but that's just my personal opinion.
And that makes a lot of sense. Anything that's got a round structure, anything that's because like I picked Quake Arena randomly, but yeah, anything where it's like, well, I'm just doing matches. I guess you could measure to like, if there was a leveling system, but that's a very arbitrary kind of point, and that also feels more like you're competing on a high score, not a time, right? That's more the like, how quickly can I get to this score, not just how quick can I do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that there are different tournaments and matches that, have similar categories with a lot of those round-based games. But I don't think there would be any way to submit that kind of things to Games Done Quick or ESA or something like that, because those very much, especially for big events, need a defined start and end point.
Yeah, makes total sense. Awesome. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break. We'll stretch our legs. We encourage you to do the same. And then we'll be right back and get back to more questions and maybe start talking some about your experience in theater and the arts, and also more about TTRPGs, which I've managed to slip plenty of in so far anyway. But take it easy, everybody. We'll be back in about 5. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, we are back. I am here chatting with Nerissa Hart, and they've been kind enough to be letting us know about all the things we didn't understand about speedrunning, all the things that they enjoy, and really just having a wonderful conversation so far. As I... Sorry, I just looked over at chat, and because my chat pool reset to the new ones, and just the first thing I see is, you willing to sell that their soul? I'm like, I'm used to seeing this message, but not from chat. What's going on?
Oh my god, we went so far down the all debts paid Animal Crossing speedrun hole. Wow.
Our chat is now just about black market ways of paying off your debts in Animal Crossing. This is now the stream. What are the worst ways that you can think of to pay off your debts in Animal Crossing? No, let's not answer that.
Is there a selling the kidney strat?
I believe that was suggested by Rachel up above. Sell the organs on Tom Nook's black market with the response of Timmy and Tommy gotta feed. So anywho...
I was not ready. That's amazing.
You've spoken about working professionally in acting and that being sort of real passion. Adam in our community want to know, what's your favorite Shakespeare play and or favorite character from Shakespeare that you've played?
Oh, God. Okay, so here's the thing. My favorite Shakespeare play used to be Midsummer Night's Dream. And I say this because I really love the different interpretations that I've seen. The best Shakespearean production I've ever seen in my life was a production of Midsummer. And they set it in, the city was in an opera house. And they made the announcement in said opera house, used it as a town hall. And then once they went into the woods, it was this completely dilapidated, breaking down theater. And the fairies would make their way around and they wore just like random costume pieces that they found scattered across the theater. And they would make their way around using trapdoors and ropes and chandeliers and all this stuff. It was like watching a trapeze.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. So that one was my favorite for a very long time. The reason I say was is I have been cast in that show 6 times. I've done it 4. 2 of them I ended up having conflicts. But when you're in a show over and over that many times, it eventually wears on you.
Yeah.
So it now is one of those that I'm like, I have respect for it, but
I could take a break from it for a while.
Yeah. I will say probably my favorite in this moment is Hamlet, solely because I am a huge fan of the play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. And I love when you have 2 very different plays or movies that tell different sides of the same story. So being able to watch the tragedy that is Hamlet and then seeing Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead and just comparing those side by side has become one of my favorite things.
Nice.
And then on top of that, I love so many of the different interpretations of Ophelia that I've seen. And especially nowadays, how much more strength has been given to that character from the interpretation of some really incredible actresses who have had the chance to play her. So yeah, I would say at this moment, Hamlet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any particular favorite role that you've played?
So I haven't actually played my favorite role in Shakespeare yet that I really want to. So I will say I had a lot of fun as Hermia when I did Midsummer because she feels a lot spicier to me than Helena does, who I also played in one of the productions. Just because Hermia is so feisty, especially about being short, like she will throw hands at people. She will throw hands at bitches. But I had a lot of fun as Hermia in the production that I was in. But I desperately want at some point to play one of the pants roles. So being able to play Ganymede and Rosalind in As You Like It, or getting to play Viola in Twelfth Night. I would really, really love to do that, especially since there was actually a long-running joke when I was in college of I used to have very long hair, and I actually regularly will switch between having long hair and then cutting it super short. When I was in high school, I was always cast as like tomboy or girl next door, this, that, and the other. When I got to college, I just was cast as men repeatedly. So I played a Cockney police sergeant with a comb over and a mustache at one point. I, in a vaudeville musical, played a male clown, essentially, who wore drag underneath. I was specifically supposed to play it as a male character in drag. And then there were several other roles that I played in college that were all mask. So ever since then, I've really wanted to play one of the Shakespearean pants roles, because now in the professional world, I get cast as traditionally pretty roles a lot more. So being able to play a role that's a balance of both of those, and getting to also, as a gender fluid actor, playing someone who has the whole gender spectrum that they're trying to play up, for me would just be really fun and liberating. So I definitely want to play Viola, but I would say Hermia is my favorite I've played so far.
Nice. So you talked about you've acted from a very early age. Which came first, sort of acting, gaming, streaming? I think you've now been on and sort of through this conversation I've put this together, but then also the second part of that question, in what ways has being an actor and an artist informed your gaming and vice versa?
Oh man, this is a really good question, Sam. So as far as it's kind of like one of the other questions when someone said it's just a burrito question that has a bunch of layers. So the order that this took place in was, it was first acting, then gaming, then streaming. So I actually started acting and knew I wanted to be a professional actor when I was 4. My parents showed me The Sound of Music and The King and I was like, I'm going to do that.
Nice.
I want to be Julie Andrews. I'm going to do that. And I think my parents at the time took it as like, I'm going to be a princess. I'm going to be a firefighter. Like, that's nice. Go play, sweetie. And then when I got older and, my more conservative parents found out that I truly wanted to be an artist and actor, they got very nervous. They finally got on board much later in life, but it took some time to get them there. Gaming was something that they very much wanted me to take part in more traditionally feminine activities. And gaming is very much, it's very much coded as a male activity. So I would occasionally go down the street, and I had a friend who had a Sega Genesis and had one of the original Sonic games. And I would play it with them, but again, had never really played a game full start to finish. But the thing that really got me hooked on gaming was when we moved to Woodbridge, Virginia, when I was 8, after my dad retired from the military. One of the boys down the street had Oracle of Seasons. And when I was like, this looks really cool, he loaned me his Game Boy Color. Nice. And I would like play it under the covers and have like a little flashlight to play it, because it didn't have
backlighting.
No, you just had a little flashlight and would play, and I would put like 3 covers so that the light wouldn't get through. So that was a big thing for me. And then I finally convinced my parents to let me get a game system when I got into DDR, so Dance Dance Revolution.
Yes.
Yeah, I played it the first time at an amusement park, and then when they found out like it was for PS2 as well, they went, it's exercise. And then after they got us that one, I was like, and I'm gonna use my own allowance to buy an N64. And they could never turn back after that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I loved the interactivity of the storytelling in video games, and just the graphics, the fact that you are a part of it, and it takes skill, it takes intuition, the puzzle solving, just everything about video games really just struck a chord with me. And then streaming wasn't something that I had even considered doing until pandemic, when acting, which was something that was a part of my life forever, that is such a huge part of my personality, a huge part of my soul. And I don't think since I was 4, I have gone more than a year without doing at least one show. There was one year I actually did something like 10 productions or something like that between the films that I had done and like shows I had been a part of. So that when I got into speedrunning and started actually recording is when I got into streaming. And then as I fell in love with it more and more and realized, wait a second, streaming brings together these really incredible communities. You can decide and like put safety tools in place to make it a better place for your community. And I wanted to bring theater to my channel. So sometimes I'll bring on friends and who are like professional actors, and we'll add VO to games that don't have it.
Nice.
So like one of them I'm doing that with is Later Alligator, which is adorable. If you've never had a chance to play it, I highly recommend. It's an adorable, almost, it looks like it's just ink drawn art, and you're in Alligator, New York City, and you're helping this kid named Pat who thinks that a murder is going to get done on him on his birthday. So you go around interviewing members. That's his exact phrasing, hence why I say it that way.
Good.
Yeah, he's like, a murder is gonna get done on me. So it's hilarious. I really recommend it. But yeah, just throughout pandemic, I fell more and more in love with the speedrunning community and then doing Let's Plays. And now I want to make it my full-time job. And I fucking love it. So yeah, started with acting, then gaming, then streaming. And in what ways has being an actor and artist informed your gaming? God, I think that because as an actor, so much of the work you do is the inner life of a character. You're constantly looking for what's the backstory, what's the motivation. And in video games, you constantly have to think of, okay, what's the motivation of this character? Where would they need to go next? And that helps with the puzzle solving. And also for games with looser stories where you're supposed to fill in the blanks yourself, like Limbo or Inside or Thomas Was Alone, all these different incredible games that are more loose. I think that being an actor and artist also helps me with having a more enriched experience because I'm constantly looking at them as pieces of art and storytelling and bringing my own imagination into more of the full gameplay experience.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That's always why I've had a really hard time with horror games. Because it's like, no, it's not the jump scare on there, but I'm like, that's a bad place. I would feel not good if I'm that character, and currently in my head I'm that character, so I would like it to stop now.
Yep. I same. The only times I have been able to actually get through horror games is if I have friends with me in the room, and at any moment I can pass the controller onto one of them. So I can, switch between first and third person. And I actually, have you heard of PT?
Yes,
I have played all of PT except for getting the ending that no one has ever found. And yeah, that's my review. It's amazing, but also I was gonna
say, incidentally, if anyone in the chat has not experienced PT, you can't sort of get this at this point, but you can go find some very good walkthrough videos of it on YouTube. It's
basically, it's the reason it's called PT is it stands for playable trailer. But Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro were going to be working together on a new Silent Hill game. It ended up getting canceled, but they made this as a trailer, and the trailer alone.
The trailer alone would legitimately, to me, rank in like top 5 scariest horror games ever. And you don't need any more of it. It is incidentally, I love, as much as I don't work in game design, I have some technical training and stuff I do, but this was never where I was. But like, there are some breakdowns of the technical ways that they established PT and they built that horror experience that is done by YouTubers who are very good, for example, at breaking game cameras, actually makes it scarier. One element of that is so for the segments where, you know, like your camera is just a little bit behind you, etc. In a spoiler-free way as possible, the camera is actually instantiated in her model. She's just behind you the whole time, and you can't see it. Yeah, all of that camera is her for whole segments.
That's amazing and also horrifying.
Yeah.
The other thing that broke me with that game, just absolutely broke me. I was playing it with a few of my roommates. So I actually got a copy, and it was solely because I found out that a friend of a friend had a PS4 with PT on it, and he was looking to sell it. And I had a PS4 and was like, I could sell my PS4 for this older PS4, but it has gaming history on it. I need to do this. So I did it. Nice. I'm obsessed. Mainly with just that it's so integral to gaming history, especially since it was one of the first things that really came out for PS4. And I remember playing it with my roommates, and we had hit a point where we were like, okay, we need to take a break. We need to take a pause. Oh, this is a lot. So we hit pause. And you know how usually pause menus are a source of safety, a source of comfort? Not this one. After a certain point, it glitches. And you start to see like letters and runes and symbols. And then the game will unpause itself and she'll be there. She'll just be there. And it's horrifying.
Yep.
Yeah. If I highly recommend looking up a like playthrough of PT. I really enjoyed the one done by Game Grumps specifically, but I just also know going in, graphics are gorgeous. Just know going in that I agree with your assessment of it is, even as like a small playable teaser game, it is one of the scariest horror games I've ever encountered.
Yeah, it's also use of one of the things that I actually really like to GM in RPGs or horror RPGs. Its use of impossible space along with the game Layers of Fear. The way that space is used, architecture is used to disorient, etc., is really, really sort of fundamental to how I like to go about it. My favorite moment ever in GMing or DMing a horror campaign was getting one of my players to legitimately not be sure which of the iterations of his character he was playing. He was just like,
That's impressive.
Don't know which one I am. I'm like, you don't need to. They're just all you. Just keep going. It's fine.
That's amazing. And I will say, I can handle TTRPG horror a lot better. So again, 10 Candles. It's my favorite tabletop game, and it is a tragic horror game. But there's so many other things that you can layer into it. And because you're the ones who are telling the story, I think that helps a little bit. Rather than it just all being produced by this game without opt-outs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
yeah. Oh, and the other game I was going to bring up. No. Oh my God. You're so fine. The other game I was going to bring up. Have you ever played Dread?
Yes.
It's, oh my God. It is one of my favorite TTRPGs now. If anyone in chat doesn't know it. So Dread is a game that, rather than rolling dice, rather than having on table stats or anything like that, there's a Jenga tower. And every time that you go to do something, anything, the GM will tell you how many blocks you have to pull. And the story will keep going and keep going. And once the tower falls, if you were trying to do something, so let's say, okay, I try to swing at this werewolf. like swing a knife or a machete at this werewolf. If you knock over the tower with your Jenga pole, you not only horribly fail at that action, but your character also dies. Now, the best mechanic in that game, which I think is so smart, is the oh god, what do they call it? The noble sacrifice mechanic. So you can at any point intentionally knock over the tower. Like if you see that someone who your character doesn't want to die trying to pull a block and it's gonna tip, you can intentionally knock it over and say noble sacrifice. You will succeed very, very highly at whatever you're trying to do, but your character's going to die in the process. And it's such a cool one-shot game. If anyone's into horror games, play it. All you need is a Jenga tower and players.
We've actually at Helpful Goat been trying to figure out how to play it in pandemic times online, and we've been trying to play around with using Tabletop Simulator, which has Jenga, in order to control it. The only question that I have about that is the fact that Tabletop Simulator's, ability to control exactly what you're doing kind of creates in my mind the vast potential that, like, one block, nothing's been removed. Crap.
Yeah, I have played quite a few board games in Tabletop Simulator, but I also am so bad at controlling it. It is very finicky.
I was gonna say it's a great system. I absolutely love it. I encourage anyone who loves tabletop games, and if you haven't heard of it, go check it out. It's available on Steam, etc. Tabletop Simulator. It's amazing. It has amazing communities of people around it, and it's a great way to get to play games with people and get to try out new games. But it does a lot of things really well. But I will say it does not emulate the precise motor control of most people. Seriously, you're gonna get that effect that you do back in the old days, where you're like, if you ever tried to sign something on computer with your mouse as a pen, you're gonna have that level of precision, but then try to manipulate a Jenga block. So we'll need to run through it, but that's definitely a thing we've considered. But yeah, I hear what you mean. I love streaming's ability to create communities. I love the community we've managed to make in Helpful Goat, and the ability to tell stories and have those go out is something that's really awesome. You had talked about the fact that it's been sort of a big stretch here where you haven't been in a production. Adam had also asked, did you see or participate in any Zoom theater productions during the pandemic? And any thoughts that you have on sort of potential and emerging relationship between theater and streaming?
So I did see a few Zoom productions, but I think that one of the biggest problems I had with them, personally, I'm not a huge fan, but I think it's because there are so many different theater companies who haven't worked in the technological space before or aren't as familiar with digital immersive theater or online LARPs or those communities that already have done so much of the work and how to make that successful. And instead they're like, oh, we're going to do a Zoom reading of Rabbit Hole. Rabbit Hole is a kitchen sink play. It's not meant to be performed on Zoom. It's written specifically to be performed in person in a particular kind of setting. But the things that I found most rewarding to watch when it comes to the online space, whether it be for Zoom readings or just in entertainment, are things that are actually built for that medium. So I've actually much preferred watching like TTRPG streams, or, okay, these people are recording a radio play or a podcast and you can see them, but you know that this is specifically meant for an audio medium. And those are things that I found so much more rewarding. And I think that the theater space can learn so much from the digital entertainment and the gaming space. And some theaters I know of have done that. So there's one company in DC called 4615, and they actually, during pandemic, while there were a lot of other companies who were like, we're just going to do Zoom productions of this play that already exists and is not really made for this, they went, cool, we're going to make a video game. And they got a few professional actors from the community and a few professional playwrights. And then the guy who helped program it, like, he just happened to know some Python and decided to pick up a lot more. And they built a whole episodic video game.
Yeah.
as part of their theater company. And there are others that I have seen where, like, there are some theater companies. There was one, Flying V Theater. One of their big things that they actually do is also professional wrestling. And they played a podcast professional wrestling game for their theater company. So it brought together all these different things. So it was these incredible actors and improvisers playing a game that still fit the mission statement of their company. So the ones I've found have been the most successful are the people who find ways to make sure that theater is relevant in that space.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever directed a show, if anyone in the chat has ever directed a show, one of the biggest questions you'll get asked oftentimes when you're making the pitch is, why here and now? And I think a lot of Zoom productions didn't really take that into account more than just because we're in pandemic. You know, they didn't say why it actually was important to be produced on this particular medium. And the companies that I found so successful with it are the people who have found ways to join those together or found ways to make theater specifically relevant to the Zoom medium. So yeah, that's my long-winded way of saying some, but I think that theater needs to get more technologically literate. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Makes sense. Well, I mean, I think it also relates to some of what we were talking about with, for example, PT. One of the things that I found most amazing about PT was the fact that it fully utilized the medium of video games to produce horror. Like, it's such a subtle thing, but even what you said, I pause is not safe. Pause stops the game. So, you know, some games like Bloodborne, etc., there is no true pause menu. Yeah. That's then an assumption, but PT undermined this fundamental assumption of, great, I press pause, everything is stopped, and it's like, no, I see you. No more. And it's and that could only happen in a video game. And that's beautifully effective to me. And so, you know, and I understand that. Like, that's actually a thing that I've thought a lot about. You know, you comment that I think TTRPGs work really well in streaming because it's hanging out, it's performative, you get to do all this, and that works really well. But there are moments, one of the things I challenge myself to do when we put together a campaign is, what are moments that we can produce streaming a TTRPG that need it to be streamed? What is something where the stream makes the moment in the game better? Because the medium we're in at this point isn't just TTRPG, it's a streaming TTRPG. That went bad. TTRPG.
It's hard to say it multiple times.
Yeah, I'm just like, no, it's too many letters. But you know, that same sort of thing of, what medium are we in? How can we use that medium and not be fighting that medium, but embracing it and doing things that we can? So that makes a ton of sense to me. So one of the things that I mentioned, and obviously you also have an extensive theater background, but a lot of TTRPGers have sort of mentioned to you while we were on break, almost everyone in Helpful Goat and sort of the core of us has a theater background except for me. And that informs a lot of sort of their playing, their DMing, their GMing, their approach to this. You've talked a bit about how that background has affected your gaming. Do you feel that your speedrunning influences TTRPG playstyle?
Interesting. Oh my gosh. You know what? I'm trying to think if it has. I know for a fact that there are so many of the skills from devised and immersive theater, since that's really my biggest skill set, is being part of the shows where you're actually there talking to the audience. You're right there with them. And I know so much of that has carried on for TTRPGs. I think as far as speedrunning, it hasn't carried over to all TTRPGs, but it has inspired some of the characters I've played. So, for example, I had one character who I basically made specifically because Wander in Shadow of the Colossus is built so rather than getting a ton of weapons and having a million choices as you play through, you start off with a sword, bow and arrow, and that's it. Then you're on your own, go forth. And I had one TTRPG game that I played where it was a sword and bow and arrow with no bonuses, and they refused to switch out for any other weapon or any other sword. And I think that part of that came from the mindset of, with speedrunning, you have to work trying to do as much as you can with a lot less, like gathering less resources, gathering less of this, that, and the other. And that definitely inspired the creation of this character, to see how far I could get with this very specific role-playing choice, making the game intentionally harder for myself, but trying to still pull off really badass things. So almost trying to, using the mindset of speedrunning, make the game more epic and more challenging for my character. So I would say that's one of the biggest ways that it inspired it. Yeah.
Interesting. I will also address the chat, which is pointing out my incorrectness at this point. One, I should have subbed out instead of core. Sort of founding members in our original campaign had a heavy theater flavor. And at this point, we have grown and expanded to the point where I would define the Helpful Goat core as including many people who have come in from sort of different interest areas, and I think that makes us a lot stronger. It's one of the things that I always appreciate. Not absolutely nothing against theater. I think it's a great basis for things, but I think that it's really interesting to see different people's perspectives on the methods of how do you build a character, how do you enact a character, and all of those different things are interesting and good, and I always like getting as many viewpoints as we can. So, mea culpa to the chat. You all are core, and not all of you have been in theater. Blame Adam and Andy for that. Adam/Andy sort of asked different facets of this question, which I thought was really interesting. If speedrunning provides a particular way of playing games with its own set of challenges that spice up gameplay, what might be similar ways to make a TTRPG game more challenging just for the fun of it? And you kind of just said one of the, limited equipment, I'm just going.
Yeah, okay, so I actually have a few answers to this question, because some of it I've actually brought in as a player and some of it I've brought in as a GM.
Nice.
So as a GM, one of the similar ways that I found to make TTRPG gameplay more challenging just for the fun of it is combine multiple layers. So there was one dungeon I ran, and I was so proud of it. I will definitely be using it in future campaigns. And I'm not worried about spoilers here, because it's something that literally you can't do online. So what I did is they went into this dungeon, and it was this underground library. And as soon as they entered, like, they couldn't see anything. And they also couldn't hear their own voices, but then when they went to cast spells, they worked. And the very first time one of them made noise, I said, "Hey, pull a block." And they were like, "What do you mean?" And then I pulled out a Jenga tower. And they had to figure out slowly that A, it was living darkness inside of this dungeon, and B, even though they couldn't hear the noise they were producing, it was because the living darkness feeds on sound. And there was a creature in there that every time you made noise, there was a chance of the big beastie hearing it. So they would have to keep pulling blocks. And then when the tower finally fell, the boss monster found them. So
That's awesome.
it set a timer on them making their way through this dungeon. It wasn't that the final boss was right at the end. The final boss could show up at any moment, and they had to play their cards right, not only figuring out things through the dungeon, but being very careful about how many spells they cast with verbal components, how much they communicated to each other verbally. And since the thing had basilisk powers, essentially, of if you look directly in its eyes, you will freeze and turn to stone, they also had to worry about using mirrors and making sure when they were attacking to not look directly at it.
Nice.
So that's one thing that I really enjoy, is adding other games or other challenges on top of what people already expect from D&D, or just TTRPGs in general. And then as a player, something I found really rewarding is playing characters that are slightly off script. And what I mean by that is not just power playing a character. So yes, with a barbarian, for example, you expect that their main stats would be strength and con, right?
Yeah.
Or like strength and dex, those kind of things that really play into it.
Yeah.
My favorite D&D character I've ever played was named Angie Hayward, was a Southern barbarian who just she was not raised a soldier, she was not raised a warrior, but her farm and her family, her farm was taken, her family disappeared. It's a whole long story, but the entire time she joined this rebellion specifically to find them and get them back. So she was insanely strong as a carpenter and a stable hand and all these other things. And I made her a barbarian, but her main stats were in strength and charisma. And she was clumsy as fuck. So she had awful dex. And I built this in as a character component, but also specifically to make it more challenging for myself to try and think of ways that this character could move through combat. And she constantly went down. She was regularly being taken down, but in the role play, it also motivated my character to become really good friends with the spellcasters and to really appreciate the work that they do, the healing that they do. So using things like that in order to motivate specific role play, I think can be so rewarding. So yeah, I would say as a GM, just multi-layering, and as a player, finding really interesting ways to play characters and build their stats, not for the getting the highest stat possible that the book tells you can get, but building it specifically based on the backstory you've given that character and letting their stats then grow as they do.
Yeah. So, I think that's very interesting. That's actually related to an idea that I'm playing with for starting characters as level zeros, where you're not adventurers, and then actually setting it up. And this will be coming up actually in a tier campaign of, as they solve some of the problems as these relatively mundane people, be like, oh, hey, you have an attribute up here now. You solved that with talking to a person. That's charisma. Or, oh, now you have proficiency in persuasion because you just talked your way out of a couple of messes, not by lying, but by understanding what, or one of my favorites is actually inverting that, because a lot of times, one of the things I also love, homebrew rule, I'm like, you don't have to act it out fully, though I'm blessed with people who like to do that type of role play. But I'm like, I want you to say what your character is saying, and I will affect the difficulty of a persuasion check or anything else based on that. And one of the things is like, oh, hey, you keep saying really effective things. I'm not actually giving you proficiency in persuasion. That's insight. You know that person. You can think about that person, you can empathize with them, and you can say the right thing. That's not being effective at persuasion, that's being effective at understanding another creature. And so those kinds of things, one of my favorite characters that it was not mine, but I've ever been fortunate enough to play at a table with was, it's kind of funny, Barbarian. Super strong,
nice.
Folk hero background from having defended things, but
also folk hero background from defending the
village. Yep,
from the Feywilds and the Displacer Beasts. Yep.
I believe that this was someone when I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was essentially when his cattle were getting attacked by an ogre, and one of them had been killed. Basically, bashed the ogre to death with a cow, and was like a half orc. The sort of traditional sort of class for it, but also his main thing was he wanted to cook for people. And so, he always cooked the campfire meals, and the things that he would look for was not, can I go get more weapons? It was can I get better spices? Can I do better this? And, he had his battle skirt versus his party skirt versus his casual skirt. And it was just this character was just a joy to get to interact with. And I played a ranger who was a very short tabaxi, who was essentially Puss in Boots. And one of my favorite interactions was the barbarian was a character who did not want fame or glory. Like, he didn't understand it. This was not what was motivating him, but he inevitably got it because he beat the hell out of giant things. My character wanted fame and glory. This barbarian almost constantly had like basically a very diminutive tabaxi going, stop paying attention to him. But
that's amazing. Holy crap.
But yeah, so I do love those types of things. The idea of a Jenga tower just being like, hey guys, surprise, sounds amazing. And I very much appreciate anyone who likes to try to cook up additional sets of layers and rules for D&D, because I think it's for any TTRPG really, because I think that's part of the fun is, again, everybody had fun. You're doing it right.
Yep, 1,000,000%.
So I think that's going to take us to the end of the segment tonight. Thank you so much, Nerissa, for hanging out and having a conversation with us. If you would ever be interested in playing some Dungeons and Dragons or one of a number of RPGs with us, please feel free. We would love to have you. We play stuff about 3 times a week. We play lots of one-shots of systems other than D&D. We play lots of D&D. We would love to have you on if you would be interested. We also...
Let's talk about it offline because I am interested, but my calendar, so that would be a whenever I have the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We also
absolutely.
like to fill we like to fill the month of October with horror themed RPG programming. So if you'd be interested in that. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights, for your answers, for having a great time. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you for the conversation. It's been a delight to be here. Thank you so much.
Very glad. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Like I said, check us out next week on Thursday. We shall have some either Spire or D&D one-shot. And then on Friday, we will be returning to sort of one of the main campaigns, Fates of Rin, as I play a healer who has been pushed absolutely too far this time. Thank you so much. As always, stay safe, be well, be kind to yourselves and to each other. Love y'all.